Okay, I'd like to welcome Murat Guventurk. He has a vast amount of experience in implementing the SCOR model in companies. I'm very pleased that Murat is willing to share his experience with us. Welcome, Murat. I'm very excited to hear from you about your experience, and please introduce yourself.
Hi, Zach. Thanks for having me. Well, I'm a mechanical engineer with a master's degree in systems engineering and working for 27 years now. For the last 21 years, I have my own consulting company helping my clients to enhance their capabilities to better run their supply chains. With over 400 projects, I believe I have seen a lot. Still, there are always some cases which surprise me. Nevertheless, I will be happy to share my experience with you, Dirk.
Okay, very, thank you for that. What is your expert opinion about the SCOR model?
Well, I learned about the SCOR model back in 2006 when the Supply Chain Council introduced the fifth version of the model. And it took me very little time to understand that the SCOR model is going to fill a huge gap in the industry. The gap existed primarily because while the companies were claiming to move to a future where they had to integrate their supply chains from their upstream suppliers to their downstream customers or distribution channels, they were having their own, and most of the time, different definitions for the components of supply chain management, which can only create a chaos. In my perspective, the SCOR model very clearly addresses the four dimensions, or let's say the challenges, which, if not dealt with, can fuel that chaos. The first challenge was that many companies, in fact, failed to understand that they were trying to manage different demand chains with a single supply chain strategy, and that these demand chains required different and sometimes conflicting supply chain management functionalities. So the SCOR model guides the enterprises to identify their demand chains and then help them to define the supply chain functionalities on top. The second challenge the companies had their performance measurement systems. The companies were either not using the correct metrics to evaluate the success of their strategies, or they were using self-defined, non-standard metrics. Well, after so many years, my clients still surprise me with how innovative they can get with their metrics. For example, how many different versions can you get for the metric order completion cycle time? Well, you are measuring the time of a cycle, right? So there are two questions. When does it start and when does it end? So let's start with the first question. When does the cycle start for order completion? Is it when the customer sends an order? Or is it when the order is registered into your ERP system? Or when the order is pre-approved for customer credit? Or when the order is sent to the distribution center? Or when the order is available in stock? And for the second question, when does the cycle clock stop? When the order is picked and packed, or when the order is ready for shipment? When shipped, when delivered, or when delivered in full? Believe me, Dirk, I have seen many more different versions and combinations, so you should not be surprised to see how a single same process can be measured differently by your suppliers or your customers, and how complicated it is when you report that your supplier is not performing well when they think that they are doing a perfectly good job. So enough with the metrics. The third challenge is with respect to the definitions of the supply chain processes. Very similar to the metric story, the processes and activities there were all defined differently. The consequences of this gap is that due to the wrong process definitions, the processes are either assigned to wrong organizations, wrong people. The end-to-end visibility of the process is lost. The inputs and outputs of the processes are neither defined nor aligned. So the SCOR model addresses this challenge by standardizing the processes, synchronizing activities with inputs, outputs, and aligning the corporate goals with performance metrics that are linked to the supply chain process activities. The last challenge is about the ambiguity the organizations are facing when they are trying to improve their supply chain processes with all the best practices and technological opportunities lying around. There are literally hundreds and thousands of practices which can improve when correctly used, or perhaps disrupt your supply chain when inappropriately implemented. So the SCORE model provides a set of proven practices in different categories, such as emerging, best, or standard, helping companies to match the correct practices to the processes where they will be impacting the performance metrics.
Thank you very much, Murad, for your elaborate answer. In your experience, what are the most important reasons for companies to implement the SCORE model?
Well, Derek, I believe my previous responses give an idea about the most important reasons. So I will not repeat them all, but in a nutshell, let me summarize that to say that the SCORE model helps companies, one, to align their strategies with their supply chain functionalities, two, to use universally accepted metrics to measure their processes, three, to correctly define and synchronize their process activities, and four, to guide their organization with best practice. I have to highlight a hidden value that companies get after implementing the SCORE model. Well, they surely get a better picture of how all the functions of the company are tangled together, and they also realize that process-based management produce better results than a function or silo-based management system.
Okay, thank you. Where did your customers start implementing the SCORE model? Did they start with the metrics or with standardizing their processes?
All right. Well, I had both the clients who started implementing SCORE on their own and those who asked for my guidance. Regardless of how you start, you soon realize that this is a long journey. And it's important to know about the stories of other companies who made this journey. And so this is where consultants with previous experience can really help those companies who want to implement SCORE model for the first time. In fact, I would like to recommend an excellent book to our audience who are interested in how SCORE models can be implemented successfully. In fact, I have the book right here with me. The book is called Supply Chain Excellence. It's co-authored by Peter Bostoff and Robert Rosenbaum. It's about a real-life story of a SCORE-based transformation project and has all the correct ingredients for a successful project. But to return to your question, the successful journeys followed, in fact, the same steps that are, in fact, taught in all SCORE training classes, like the ones you are teaching, Dirk. Those four steps are, first, start categorizing your demand chains and identify strategies that support the value of your demand chain. Two, link the strategies to the correct business metrics and measure your as-is gaps. Three, improve or optimize your processes, starting with the areas that have the largest impact on your value chain performance. And four, use the best practices to educate your people and increase their long-term skills.
Okay, thank you. Could you describe the benefits your customers have experienced while starting with SCORE?
Okay, first of all, let me say that the change does not happen overnight. and some SCOR projects may sometimes turn into long-term transformation projects. So for those long journeys, the benefits are gained in the long term as increased revenues, increased market shares, definitely increased profits, and reduced working capital. I would say spread over 1 or 2 years. The gains are sustainable, and the companies who have gone through this long-term transformation projects become more robust against the supply chain risks of the future. For more supply chain mature companies which seek short-term results, the typical benefits are reduced inventories by categories or increased customer service levels by channels or improvement of a small-scale functional process. And the gains are more short-term and small in scale.
Thank you. What are the challenges of implementing SCOR?
Well, changes in supply chain management are and have always been hard because of all the interactions between the players and the functions. So the obvious challenge would be to understand that a set of processes have to be changed and aligned for the effect to be realized and be sustainable. So the obvious statement with implementing SCORE is that it's not a silver bullet. It has to be accompanied by a series of improvement initiatives across the functions or entities. SCORE does not have the answer for every problem. It's a framework, and it requires the involvement of the supply chain players of the companies who need to custom design the supply chain processes using the framework.
Okay, thank you. It is often said that top management approval is crucial for changing processes. What are specific success factors when starting to use SCOR company-wide?
Okay. Well, first of all, the answer is ownership of change. Picking up from where I left from the previous answers, SCOR implementations easily become transformation projects, be it in small or large scale. Hence, the support of the management is very crucial. So a success factor I find valuable is to create a quick gain for the company using the SCOR approach. This could be done very easily by showing a business metric which was never used before and identifying the potential saving due to the gap we have for that specific metric. Another success factor I remember would be is that aligning all the functions or players around a single company-wide strategy is very crucial. So it is important to link the functional strategies and the goals into this single company strategy. In my experience, I have witnessed that just showing that the companies running different demand chains or serving different clients and that they need to differentiate their strategies for these customer categories have become an eye-opener for the critical decision makers. And last, I can confidently say that once the decision makers see that in the past they were treating their demand chains with a single approach, and that this is in fact what is causing the problem, all players become more cooperative, and this is what we really need in SCOR transformation projects, namely ownership of change.
Okay, thank you very much, Murad, with sharing your experience with SCOR. So what Murad is saying that it is important to define demand chains, to have the demand chains aligned with your supply processes, manufacturing and also purchasing, managing the flow of materials, the characteristics of customer segments and the strategy of the organization together determine the performance measure to use. Okay, thank you very much again, Murad, for your contribution.
My pleasure, Vek. Thank you for the opportunity.
Thank you.